Let me begin by wishing you a very happy Pakistan Day. I welcome you to this briefing, and I would like to inform you that we would be focusing primarily on the 48th session of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers that Pakistan has hosted from 22nd to 23rd of March 2022. The conference was a resounding success on all counts, from organizational and management points of view to substantive preparations and outcomes. Coinciding with the 75th anniversary of independence, the conference is a landmark in Pakistan's history and in the context of our leading role in the Islamic world. It was a great event for Pakistan's diplomacy. Being a regular session, the conference had a full agenda, and the foreign ministers adopted a whole range of significant outcomes, declarations, communiques, and resolutions. In the joint stakeout last night, the foreign minister and the OIC Secretary General highlighted some of the key outcomes. Let me present to you the context, objectives, and achievements of this conference in a little bit more detail. First, on the significance and context. This meeting took place in the backdrop of conflicts and tensions around the world, amidst persistent denial of justice and rising inequalities. At the same time, there are opportunities in the economic, scientific, and technological areas that need to be tapped. To overcome these challenges and to leverage these opportunities, partnerships are essential among the Islamic world and beyond. Therefore, Pakistan's presentation of an overarching theme, partnering for unity, justice, and development, meant a realistic appraisal of current challenges and opportunities faced by the Muslim Ummah and presentation of a shared vision and plans to address them. The CFM articulated a clear message that the Muslim world was desirous of being a partner in peace, not in conflict. The CFM once again recognized Pakistan's leading role in the OIC. The meeting also sent out a special expression of solidarity with the people of Pakistan on the country's 75th anniversary of independence. Pakistan's prominent role in the OIC is evident by, number one, a robust participation in this conference. You would have noticed there were over 800 foreign delegates, over 45 ministerial level participants, high-level dignitaries from OIC members and observer states, and international and regional organizations. And the important and unprecedented participation by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi as a special guest. You also know about the robust engagement of Pakistan over the years with the OIC. This CFM was the 7th high-level OIC meeting convened by Pakistan since the organization's establishment in 1969. These include 2 summits in 1974 and 1997 and 5 CFMs, besides 3 extraordinary sessions at ministerial level. Now, in terms of major outcomes, I'll give you a global picture. There are some key indicators on this. First, Islamabad Declaration. I'll give you more details about that. Forceful resolution on Jammu and Kashmir dispute. Comprehensive joint communique and an action plan by the contact group on Jammu and Kashmir. Strong resolution on Palestine. Operationalization of OIC Humanitarian Trust Fund on Afghanistan. Appointment of OIC Special Envoy on Islamophobia. Resolution on threats to peace and security in South Asia, in which grave concerns were expressed on Indian missile launch incident of 9th March. Pakistan's proposal to convene a ministerial conference to identify mechanisms and tools for promotion of peace and prevention of conflicts in the Muslim world. Over 140 resolutions on the entire range of political, security, humanitarian, economic, social, legal, and financial issues, Muslim minorities, Islamophobia, arms control, terrorism, COVID-19 response, illicit financial flows and corruption, mediation, and OIC reforms were adopted. There were 20 resolutions which were co-sponsored or sponsored by Pakistan. These included resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir, arms control, peace and security in South Asia, UN Security Council reform, Muslim minorities, situation in Afghanistan, Islamophobia, countering terrorism, illicit financial flows, combating corruption, COVID-19 response, and Pakistan's 75th anniversary celebrations. Now, in terms of key outcomes, let me give you a perspective for Pakistan. Jammu and Kashmir dispute, you know that this is a key focus for Pakistan at the OIC. Let me give you 8 indicators to let you understand the importance and significance of the outcomes of this conference. Number 1, unanimous adoption of a forceful resolution on Jammu and Kashmir dispute. Number 2, robust advocacy by the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister. You listen to their statements. Number 3, strong expressions of support and solidarity in statements by the OIC Secretary General, Saudi Arabia, Niger, Asian, Arab, and African groups, China. You all listened to their statements in the inaugural session, plus statements by OIC members, one after the other, in the closed working sessions. Number 4, adoption of a comprehensive joint communique by the Jammu and Kashmir Contact Group. Number 5, action plan by the Contact Group and its approval by the CFM. Number 6, presentation of visit reports by the OIC Special Envoy on Jammu and Kashmir, IPHRC, and the Assistant Secretary General of OIC for Humanitarian Affairs, all related to the situation in IIOJK. Strong reiteration of solidarity and support in the Islamabad Declaration on the question of Kashmir. Number 8, endorsement of Pakistan's position on legal, diplomatic, human rights, humanitarian, and peace and security dimensions of the Jammu and Kashmir issue. Let me highlight for you OIC resolution on Jammu and Kashmir, its key elements. It contained a strong expression of support and solidarity with the Kashmiri people, their inalienable right to self-determination, and rejection of Indian attempts to equate their just cause with terrorism. An emphasis that the question of Jammu and Kashmir is of utmost importance for the Muslim Ummah and required a unified position from member states at international fora. Robust endorsement of support for settlement of the dispute in accordance with the UNSC resolutions, its final disposition under the UN-supervised plebiscite, and the indispensability of its just settlement for durable peace in South Asia. Very important, a reiteration of rejection of India's unilateral and illegal actions since 5th August 2019 and the demand from India to reverse those actions, including demographic changes. It also deplores and condemns human rights violations in IIOJK and calls for issuance of updated report by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. The other significant meeting was that of OIC Contact Group on Jammu and Kashmir. Let me give you some of the highlights. A ministerial meeting of the OIC Contact Group on Jammu and Kashmir was held on the sidelines of the session. This was the 6th meeting of the Contact Group since 5th August 2019. The group adopted a comprehensive joint communique that articulates OIC's unified position on the human rights, humanitarian, peace and security, and legal dimensions of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. The group also adopted a forward-looking plan of action on Jammu and Kashmir outlining measures and activities by OIC member states, the contact group, the OIC Secretary General and OIC Secretariat, the OIC's Human Rights Commission, and the OIC Special Envoy on Jammu and Kashmir, how they are going to advance the Kashmir cause in the coming weeks and months. The group also received reports on the visits of Secretary General Special Envoy for Jammu and Kashmir and the Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, besides the report of the OIC Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission. Now, on the situation in Afghanistan, some of the highlights from this session. There was presentation of a report by the OIC Secretary General Special Envoy on Afghanistan to the CFM on progress achieved on decisions reached at the December 21 extraordinary session. The OIC Humanitarian Trust Fund was operationalized during the CFM. The charter of the fund was signed by the OIC Secretary General and the President of Islamic Development Bank on 21st March in the presence of the Foreign Minister. There was adoption of a comprehensive resolution on Afghanistan covering political, security, humanitarian, and economic aspects, and this resolution was sponsored by Pakistan. On Islamophobia and related subjects, some of the highlights. Adoption of a comprehensive resolution on Islamophobia with substantial inputs by Pakistan. The CFM decision to appoint OIC Special Envoy on Islamophobia to lead collective efforts on the organization's behalf. Welcoming of the unanimous adoption of UN General Assembly resolution proclaiming 15th March as International Day to Combat Islamophobia. This process, as you know, was led by Pakistan since the 47th CFM in Niamey, Niger. Proposals to strengthen the OIC's Islamophobia Observatory, adoption of comprehensive resolution on Muslim minorities in non-OIC countries, expressing serious concerns over stereotyping, stigmatization, discrimination, and violence against Muslims in India in particular. Welcoming of establishment of the Rahmatul Alameen Authority by Pakistan. In terms of strengthening OIC cooperation on combating illicit financial flows and strengthening intra-OIC cooperation against corruption, let me provide you some of the highlights. There was unanimous adoption of the joint Pakistan-Saudi Arabian resolution on strengthening OIC cooperation to prevent and combat illicit financial flows. Similarly, there was a unanimous adoption of the joint Pak-Saudi resolution on strengthening intra-OIC cooperation on anti-corruption. On COVID-19, there was adoption of Pakistan-Turkey joint resolution on strengthening cooperation and solidarity in response to COVID-19 in the Muslim world. Now, this session, you would have noticed, it came up with appreciation of a number of activities and initiatives by Pakistan in the OIC. Let me highlight for you some of those once again. Adoption of 2 new resolutions. The first, as I mentioned earlier, is the resolution felicitating Pakistan on 75th anniversary of its independence. And the second resolution, which is a very significant one, is on the Indian missile launch of 9th March. So in this resolution, the OIC foreign ministers have expressed grave concern, and they have endorsed Pakistan's call for a joint probe into the incident. I would invite you to have a detailed look at this resolution, which is very significant. Then there was appreciation for Pakistan's 10 billion tree tsunami initiative to revive forest and wildlife resources. Similarly, the conference welcomed Prime Minister Imran Khan's debt relief initiative for developing countries and his advocacy for declaring COVID-19 vaccines and treatment as public good. There was expression of support and profound gratitude to Pakistan for its continued support and facilitation to OIC Commission on Science and Technology and request for generous support for COMSTEC. The conference also lauded Pakistan's efforts for adoption of UN General Assembly resolution on promoting interreligious and intercultural dialogue, acknowledging the significance and respect for religious symbols and revered personalities. There were some elections to different OIC bodies that also took place during the conference. In one of them, Ambassador Tasneem Aslam of Pakistan was elected unopposed as member of the OIC's Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission. During the preparatory process for the CFM, Pakistan was unanimously elected as a member of the governing bodies of 3 OIC institutions, namely Islamic Center for Development and Trade, Casablanca, Islamic University of Technology, Dhaka, and the Statistical, Economic and Social Research and Training Center for Islamic Countries, which is based in Ankara. I would like to note for your information that in preparation for the conference, there was the senior officials meeting that was held in Jeddah in January, which was led by the Foreign Secretary, and over 3 days, over 100 resolutions were discussed and agreed in that session, and only a few of the resolutions on which agreement or consensus was still pending, they were carried over to the conference, and over the 2 days during the conference, on 22nd and 23rd of March, the Foreign Secretary again led the negotiations in a special committee which was meeting in parallel to the main plenary, and the special committee successfully concluded its deliberations and reaching consensus on all the outcomes and resolutions. At the end, I would just like to present to you some of the salient points of the Islamabad Declaration. This declaration captures the overall theme of partnering for unity, justice, and development. The declaration's contents are inspired by noble Islamic values and ideals enshrined in the OIC Charter and are anchored in the principles and purposes of the UN Charter. The declaration presents our assessment of the global political, security, humanitarian, economic, and technological issues and our vision and views to address them. The declaration articulates the resolve of OIC members to promote and protect our common interests, support our just causes such as Palestine and Kashmir, unify our efforts to address common challenges and leverage opportunities, uphold the rights and interests of Muslim minorities in non-OIC countries, pursue a shared vision for greater social, economic, scientific, and technological development and integration within the Muslim world and beyond. The Islamabad Declaration reaffirms a collective desire to promote harmony, tolerance, peaceful coexistence, and better standards of life, human dignity, and understanding among all peoples. In the above context, the declaration contains a proposal for convening a ministerial meeting to evolve solutions, develop mechanisms and tools to prevent conflicts and promote peace. The declaration welcomes the unanimous decision of UN General Assembly to proclaim 15th March as International Day to Combat Islamophobia. The declaration clearly rejects terrorism in all forms and manifestations and attempts this to link this evil to any country, religion, nationality, race, or civilization. The declaration also articulates our views on the devastating social and economic impacts of COVID-19 as well as climate change on developing countries. It calls for a series of concrete actions on vaccine equity, debt relief, countering of illicit financial flows, and fulfillment of climate financing commitments, as well as technology transfer and capacity building. It also acknowledges the growing role of innovation and emerging technologies in stimulating growth and digital transformation, and expresses our shared resolve to promote linkages and partnerships. On Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen, the declaration expressed deep concern at the deteriorating security and humanitarian situation resulting from the conflict. It reaffirmed unequivocal support for the universal and consistent application of the principles of the UN Charter, including non-use of force, respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, non-interference in internal affairs, and humanitarian law. Having deliberated on the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the ministers called for an immediate cessation of hostilities to prevent further loss of life and ensure that the humanitarian crisis does not worsen in Ukraine. They stressed the need for establishment of humanitarian corridors to ensure safe movement of civilians from active conflict zones and the provision of humanitarian supplies. The declaration urged both sides to engage in meaningful dialogue with the purpose of finding a solution to the present conflict. It expressed the willingness of OIC member states to support and facilitate the dialogue process between all sides if requested. About other engagements and interactions during the CFM, let me just note that we benefited from the presence of various delegations at ministerial and high levels to have a number of bilateral meetings on the sidelines. The foreign ministers of Iraq, Egypt, Palestine, and China called on the President of Pakistan, the President, Islamic Development Bank, and foreign ministers of Tajikistan, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Egypt, China, Palestine, Kazakhstan, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq called on the Prime Minister. The Foreign Minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, had meetings with the OIC Secretary General and his counterparts from Egypt, Tajikistan, Tunisia, China, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kazakhstan, Gambia, Turkmenistan, Palestine, the Kyrgyz Republic, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Thailand, the High Representative for UN Alliance of Civilizations, and US Under-Secretary of State. He also hosted 25 African heads of delegations over a dinner last night. The Foreign Secretary had also held several meetings on the sidelines. With this overview of the activities and outcomes of the 48th session of OIC Council of Ministers, I would like to conclude my remarks, and I'm ready to take your questions.